So when you hear Mamdani in another performative stunt, which is a video that just resurfaced, claiming he grew up in a third world country, I want you to understand that really what he's talking about is advocating for something other than Western civilization.
So the third holy grail of taboos in American politics, you have socialism, you have Islam, and then you have Palestine. And you are really going for the trifecta.
Let's go, baby.
Let's go. Tell me, why is Palestine a part of your politics?
When you grow up as someone, especially in the third world, you have a very different understanding of the Palestinian struggle.
Eating rice with his fingers, talking about growing up in the third world. Look, Mamdani was born in Uganda, but he was raised in South Africa, where he attended a private school. And then he moved at the age of 7 to New York City and attended one of the city's most prestigious high schools. Congressman Brandon Gill responded to that video on X. He wrote, quote, "Civilized people in America don't eat like this. If you refuse to adopt Western customs, go back to the third world." Still with us sitting here on set in Texas is Congressman Brandon Gill. Congressman, you got a lot of pushback for that response to Mamdani, people pointing out. Just for the record, people have pointed out to you pizza, burgers, hot dogs, eat with their fingers. But I don't think you can separate Mamdani's performance and what he's saying from the way he is projecting himself eating rice with his fingers. He is rejecting what we have developed as Western civilization.
That's exactly right, and you pointed this out earlier, but this is a guy who wants to defund the police, who wants to get rid of billionaires, doesn't believe they should exist, who said that his end goal is to seize the means of production. I mean, that makes Bernie Sanders sound like a moderate, and then turns around and defends the phrase globalize intifada. And he puts these videos out online of him eating rice with his hands, which, by the way, is not something that Americans do. That is third world behavior. And that is connected to his policies. You know, the goal here is to undermine Western civilization, to fetishize the third world, which is what he's doing in that video, to look other, to look unique, to look interesting, so that he can then push in these policies. You know, the next step after that is he's going to make another video in a couple of years, but instead of having a bowl of rice, it's going to be an empty bowl, because that's where his policies are going to get us.
I think there's two elements to what he's done here, this video and what he's advocating for. One, let's just acknowledge, it's just performative. That's not who he is. He did not grow up eating rice with his fingers, living in a third world. He grew up in private schools in South Africa and the U.S. It's all an act.
Yep. Oh, it's all an act. And all it is to say that I reject the cultural tenets of Western civilization, both in terms of policy and in terms of the way that I live my life. I want to live my life as they do in countries that eat rice with their hands. You know, we have so much in this country and in the West, so much economic prosperity, so much cultural prosperity that we get to enjoy, but that sits on a cultural foundation that he seeks to undermine, and that's what I was getting at in that post.
Well, and it should be pointed out, first of all, I don't think what he's doing in his behavior is separable from what he is advocating. You married someone of South Asian descent, your father-in-law, famously, Dinesh D'Souza. You're familiar with the immigrant culture and other cultures than the one you were raised with West Texas. It's not a rejection of a multicultural society unless the point of your cultural mores is to openly reject the place in which you have immigrated, to openly reject assimilation. Openly reject Western civilization.
Right, that's right. And the point of this is to push back against assimilating into Western and American culture.
Right.
You know, my father-in-law famously, as you mentioned, immigrated to the United States when he was in college. He doesn't eat rice, he doesn't eat Indian food with his hands. He eats it with a fork. Just like every other American in this country. And that's what I would expect, is cultural assimilation of immigrants who come into the United States, and that's what he's pushing back against.
More important, your father-in-law has been a huge fighter and lover of the concept and the pillars that have been built by Western civilization.
That's right.
That's the real key to this conversation, not simply just eating rice with your fingers. Congressman Brandon Gill, great to talk to you. Best of luck getting back to Washington, D.C. tonight. I hope you make your flight. You got a big vote tomorrow morning.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.